Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the interwebs. We are back for another episode 6.
Up to it.
How are you doing tonight, Jacob?
Doing pretty well. About yourself?
Colts won today?
Good day.
It's a great day. So let's get to it. Today, we are talking about The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey. It came out in 2012, directed by Peter Jackson, starring Martin Freeman, Ian McKellen, Andy Serkis, and Richard Armitage. And these movies were movies that I wanted for a long time. I know after The Lord of the Rings ended, I cried in the theater, and I just hope that one day we would get to return to Middle-earth.
We always want more.
And
sometimes, to this day, we still do.
Sometimes that's not... Sometimes you gotta stop. Sometimes
Yeah.
more is not a good idea, and we'll get into that in a bit. But spoiler warning for The Hobbit. Most likely just this movie. We might go beyond to the next two a little bit, and we might also talk Lord of the Rings. So if you haven't seen any of those movies, might be a good idea to not watch this video.
Educate yourself first.
So there, you've been warned. So the plot summary of The Hobbit is that the dwarves were kicked out of their home in Erebor by a dragon, Smaug, and they've been left basically to wander the lands for decades. And actually, I'm not sure how long it's been. Many years. We can go.
Yeah, people get old.
A good amount of years. So Thorin Oakenshield calls a bunch of dwarves together, and he and Gandalf team up to lead an expedition to the mountain and try to take it back. And meanwhile, Bilbo Baggins, a humble hobbit, gets mixed up in all of this as the burglar, and chaos ensues. So let's jump right in. What were your first impressions of this film back when you first saw it?
I remember being first just happy to see more Gandalf on screen, but the movie itself doesn't look very pretty in a lot of different ways, and the plot's kind of a jumble.
I would almost say it looks too pretty. It looks like a girl who wears too much makeup.
I can see that analogy, yeah.
And that's one of the first things that turned me off a little bit. The second thing, just really early on impression, was if you remember in Lord of the Rings, Gandalf's first interaction with Frodo is like charming, and you get a sense for his character. And this one is just kind of awkward. Like he's got like this awkward interaction with Bilbo where he's just like mumbling and like questioning Bilbo's phrases, and he's like,
"What do you mean you don't remember me?" And you're like,
"It just, I mean, that might have been in the book. I don't remember, but it just doesn't. Sometimes lines don't play well on the screen." Yeah. And I just thought that the first interaction, from the very first interaction with Gandalf, it just seemed a little off. And that was probably a hint of things to come.
Yeah.
So one of my personal gigantic issues with this film is it's just shotgun use of CGI. It's like, you get some CGI, you get some CGI, everybody get some CGI. It's like an Oprah show. Yeah. Check under your seats. Like they just use it obscenely, and they ration it out so arrogantly, and it ends up making things look a little gross.
Yeah, even just people's faces, like, you know, you get makeup done and then you look smooth, no acne or anything, and then they highlight that extra in the edit and like smooth out your lines so you look inhuman and not even an elf like.
Yeah, it's they look like dolls.
Yes.
It's really unsettling. Like, is this Barbie the movie, or is this The Hobbit? And my big gripe with this, I've said this time and time again, you've had to endure this rant several times, is you look at Lord of the Rings, they used costume and makeup. And the Uruk-hai and the orcs, they looked terrifying, they looked evil. And then you go to The Hobbit, and it's just all CGI, and it looks like you're in a video game cutscene. And it doesn't look good. It looks worse than The Lord of the Rings. Yeah. It's not going to age well. It's already starting to not age well.
It's 10 plus years over The Lord of the Rings, and it looks a lot worse, which is just sad in a lot of ways.
I mean, I don't know why they did that. Maybe it was cheaper, but again, that's not when you've done something so prestigious as The Lord of the Rings, I don't know why you would. I'm at a loss for words. It really just drives me insane.
It's frustrating. Like They changed their entire style because they rely a lot less on makeup.
That's true. Like nothing looks the same as it does. Like the orcs look. They still look like orcs, but they don't look like Lord of the Rings orcs. And the wargs look like wolves instead of the wargs in Lord of the Rings, which the wargs in Lord of the Rings somehow look better.
Yeah, they do.
That's never good when a movie that's like 10 years older than yours is looking better. And they use it so much in the fight scenes too, and it's just like they should have just stuck to a good thing. They shouldn't have changed it. Like the Lord of the Rings established what they should have done. There was no issues with it. Like people would not have been mad at them if they just kept the same style.
To this day, like the only problems with Lord of the Rings are like occasionally you're like that's a CGI edit of like Legolas sliding down an Oliphant's trunk, or you know, you get the big massive battles and you're like, okay, that's probably a program that's running that, not a bunch of ghosts slamming into a wall of people. But like in this, you're like, even a person running around a corner is motion blurred for like the few milliseconds you can see it, and it just does not look attractive.
It doesn't look good at all.
It doesn't convey momentum or suspense onto you as a viewer. Like there's whole chase scenes and I'm like, when are we gonna get through this?
My eyes kind of just like Lord of the Rings had action, but I never felt that it was overflowing with action. It had it in the right times.
Yeah.
And the Hobbit, my eyes would start to kind of glaze over during some of these action sequences, similar to how they would in a Transformers movie. It's like the action's too over the top, too unbelievable, and CGI really, really pours a lot into that. Moving on to our next topic, the acting in this film. What did you think overall?
I have no issues with what's portrayed on screen. I know behind the scenes there were a lot of really difficult things going on, especially with Ian McKellen having to record to like green screens and tennis balls instead of actually being on set with characters. I believe it almost drove him mad. I think it drove him to tears. There's really sad stories about it, but everything on screen is great. I especially love Bilbo's interactions with Gollum. Those scenes are brilliant. Absolutely. Let me just say that Martin Freeman does a fantastic job playing Bilbo Baggins. Couldn't ask for more. He's definitely like the acting's not the big issue in this movie. Yeah. It's not as good as it was in Lord of the Rings. This movie we're just gonna constantly compare it to Lord of the Rings. There's no way we're not gonna get away with that. So just keep that in mind. But The Hobbit doesn't suffer from bad acting. It has other issues. I think largely it's just technically the issue. The issues are all technical and scripting. Yeah, definitely, and plot and all that. So if acting's not a big issue, was music an issue for you at all? Lord of the Rings kind of overpowered you a lot, and you're like, oh my god, this is some tight music while you listen to it. But I really only felt one or two moments where I was like, the music really fits this, and I'm glad this is here. When I was a kid, which was around the time Lord of the Rings came out, you'd play it on the playground and you'd have the Lord of the Rings music going through your head. The Hobbit, I don't feel like does that at all. You have like that one like far away. Yeah, that's when they're all singing. That's beautiful, but that's it. Yeah, that's like really it. And there's only one good soundtrack moment when they're first starting to leave the Shire and they're going up over hills, and you're like, that's really powerful, nice. Yeah, but I felt like with Lord of the Rings, every single piece of music was memorable. It was beautiful, it was well composed, and then The Hobbit, it felt kind of like they phoned it in. It didn't feel nearly as magnificent and scoped out. I kind of compare it to the new Star Wars trilogy. Yeah. The music there is really not... Newer music in general will kind of do that now, where it really is okay with just being background. I don't like that. Yeah. I like the... I understand that, like, sometimes we like to form our own opinions and not have the music take over, but... Man, there's nothing like a good score where it's just stuck in your head hours after you leave the theater. You're just thinking about Star Wars, Armageddon, things that just overpower you. Yeah, the soundtrack definitely does not do that. And it's not like this is a subtle movie with like deep emotions where we need to be quiet to watch everything. It's an action movie. It's an action movie. We can be blown away by the music. Speaking of... Oh, God. You mentioned this already, but earlier today, the first song that the dwarves sing... like that's what Bilbo Baggins hate. That's bad.
They should have
I
just
don't
cut
wanna
that.
hear
Yeah, they should have just
It
cut
was
the
it was
sequence.
pointless. Like, sure, they're fun and wow, they're magical at cleaning dishes really quickly. Like, what's the point of that?
It was very, very childish, and you must understand that The Hobbit was a children's book, Lord of the Rings were for adults, and yet, like, I still think that song should have been cut. It don't think it serves any purpose, but it takes out time, and this film is, what, 169 minutes long?
Yeah,
That is almost 3 hours long.
it's a little too much.
Yeah, that's one of the sacrifices that you could have made.
Yeah, that song does not do what the other song does, where it actually sets up character and gives
Motivation.
you, like, yes, it gives you an insight into them.
So that's all we've got from music. Really just that one song. We just keep going back to it.
It's a good song.
We already kind of touched on the action sequences.
It's
They
a
were.
huge jumble.
I mean, like I said, I don't think they'll age well. I found myself going like, come on, like, what is that?
So, like, for some big scenes in sword fighting and general battles, they're cutting out the interesting part of action. Like, you see a swing and it hits somebody, and then it cuts away to somebody else. And, like, Lord of the Rings, you see a swing, a dude's head is gone, blood goes flying out, and then the body collapses out of screen, and then it cuts.
Yeah.
So you're cutting away all the interesting part, all the gore, and trying to make it more PG, and there's no, like, actual flow to the combat.
It just felt that every kill was like meaningless. It was just fodder. In Lord of the Rings, I remember vividly like various moves that like Aragorn did or whatnot, and flourishes and all that. In The Hobbit, it's just so much like hack and slash. It's like you're playing Diablo or something. You're just cutting down enemy after enemy, and it just gets monotonous. And on top of that, you've got all these over the top sequences and acrobatics from dwarves. Like, they've got very short legs, so they're not going to be doing all the stuff that they do in this movie, realistically.
There's also some stuff where they're like, wow, this is going to be a really over-the-top cool move, and then the dwarf guy's going to attack from behind, and he throws his hammer backwards like this and hits a warg, and the warg just dead. And you're like, no.
Yeah, you
Physics.
you don't have eyes in the back of your head, nor the power behind that blow. It's just like they should have tempered down the fighting, the combat, and it would have been fine.
Just let it get a little bit more Eastern filmmaking with it. Let us actually see some of the things happening that are in the fight.
Yeah, I already alluded to this before, but one of my big gripes is just like the crumbling of like of what they're standing on, and then like they just like maneuver with it, like when the rock giants are fighting and they're all on the cliff, and the cliff is just moving back and forth. It's too much. And then when they're escaping from the goblin tunnel and they're surfing on the boardwalk thing, and it's just like coming down a freaking chasm. And it's wood, and it's not exactly sturdy wood either. I don't understand how it doesn't break, and it just frustrates me. I can't just suspend my disbelief that much.
There's a really good example right before that where one of Philly or Killy, whichever one looks more human,
Feely.
he blocks three arrows.
It's Keely.
Keely?
I think it's Keely.
So he blocks 3 arrows with his sword, and they're from pretty close away. So he goes dun dun, and then he pulls up a ladder, and he doesn't move the ladder at all to defend himself.
He uses it as cover.
And there's
basically
2 rungs, and the arrows hit here and here. This is believable and cool that you could anticipate where people are shooting, but to know that 2 arrows are going to exactly where the 2 ladder rungs are, that's not okay.
Or there's just
doesn't work.
horrible archery by the goblins. Either way. Moving on, I don't think this will come as a surprise, but when I compare this movie to The Lord of the Rings blows it out of the water.
100%.
And I don't have any more else to say about that. You?
This movie, structurally, action-wise, visually, does not flow. And it's painful.
It's thoroughly outclassed by The Lord of the Rings, and it's like the disappointing little brother to The Lord of the Rings. Which as to fans, it was disappointing too. I didn't want to dislike this movie. I really wanted The Hobbit to be good, and it was just heartbreaking when it wasn't.
That being said, I think this movie, out of all the movies, has my favorite Gollum scenes.
Yeah,
I honestly think that the riddle scene is my favorite. Like when he's trying to figure out the teeth riddle, and you see his eyes just animated, like, oh no.
Yeah, we'll talk about that more depth a little later. Finally, a lot of people put the blame on a bad film on the director. In this case, I don't do so. Peter Jackson was not supposed to direct this film.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be Guillermo del Toro. but he had a falling out with the studio, and the studio kind of dragged Peter Jackson into it. They didn't really have a bona fide script. They didn't really have a good schedule. They were kind of doing this on the fly. There's no passion behind it. They were all just really stressed out, and you can tell they got the job done, but there was no love or tenderness or passion behind it like there was in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, it's like Guillermo del Toro had like a year and a half of setup and scripting and storyboarding and stuff for his movie.
Yeah.
And then he's gone, and the studio's like, "Hey, Peter Jackson, make the movie now." And he's like, "Okay, it's gonna be my movie because I'm a director and I'm gonna make it mine, but I have no prep time.
Yeah.
I'm gonna wing it."
There's a thing called pre-production, folks. Peter Jackson did not have much of that, so that makes it kind of difficult to make a good film. So if you're gonna blame someone, I'd blame Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
They should not have rushed this film. They made a lot of money off of it. Could have made more if they were actually masterpieces.
Could have been allowed to keep the rights to the new ones.
Yeah, well, you win some, you lose some. But that was the first half of our show. We'll be back for J.R.R. 9. Do not dab ever again on the show. And we are back, and right before we jump into J.R.R. 9, please keep in mind that this video is sponsored by absolutely no one, because we get about 40 views a show. So,
We're gonna big gamble.
Yeah, big gamble. We're gonna play a game called J.R.R. 9. Mm-hmm. If we like the element, we will hold up yeah. If we dislike the element of the film, we will hold up 9. So let's jump right in. First topic, or should I say character, is Bilbo Baggins. He gets a yeah.
Yep.
I don't think you could ask anybody to do better than Martin Freeman did in this movie.
He did great, and he's a good character who brings a lot of courage to a small person's role.
I like him better than Frodo.
Yeah.
I've never really liked Frodo, but Bilbo, he'll fight. Like, Bilbo's courageous. And
Frodo gets to be a bit of a dick.
Yeah.
He gets corrupted, to be fair, but...
He's also kind of he's a pansy. He like... The amount of times he throws down his sword and just like hides in the corner. Bilbo doesn't do that. Bilbo might be afraid, but Bilbo knows what has to be done, and I've always admired him for that.
And he has a good moment of humanity when he doesn't kill Gollum.
Yeah.
He learns from Gandalf's lesson.
Yeah. Moving on to another character, Thorin. I'm gonna say 9. I think he's just a poor man's Aragorn. Honestly.
Yeah. From this movie only, he gets a 9. He's like half a character right now.
Yeah,
they set up super well.
They don't develop him at all. He's kind of his development is like I don't like Bilbo to I like Bilbo.
Yeah,
that's his development.
And then wait, you mean I didn't kill that guy?
What? And
I cut his arm off. He should be dead.
Speaking of that guy, we're gonna go Azog. I'm gonna hit it with a 9.
I'm gonna say the same.
While I don't inherently dislike the addition of Azog because he's not in the books. Mm-hmm. I don't mind the addition. He looks gross. He looks like he's a video game character, and he's just like I don't know. He's just not an interesting villain.
No, he's
like a hunting dog.
Cutter.
He's a hunting dog. He's just trying to kill Thorin.
He's like his one semi-interesting moment is he kills his own dude, and you're like, okay.
I didn't care about that guy anyways. But yeah, I mean, I guess he conceptually looks cool. I mean,
yeah.
If he wasn't, CGI'd.
I like the white orc motif. If that's your kink. If
he weren't like 100% CGI, I think he'd be interesting. But every time he's on screen, I feel like I'm playing a video game.
Yeah. And
it's sad because I think they could have pulled something off with makeup and it would have looked 100% better. Moving on to I know one of our favorite parts of the film, the Gollum scene, the riddles.
Oh my god!
Very faithful to the book, very well done, well scripted, well acted. I was completely entranced. It was head and shoulders my favorite part of the film.
It's the best looking the CGI ever gets.
Indeed.
It's so good.
I kind of wish there was more Gollum in the next two movies, but they did a good job on that
Yeah.
front, staying faithful to the book and not having Gollum tag along for an adventure. um, to another character, Radagast the Brown.
Oh God.
Resounding 9.
Yeah.
I don't see the point of the character. I know that he is kind of like Gandalf's call to action, but I think Gandalf could have gotten away with at least doing it himself, or at least a lot less of Radagast.
Yeah. The whole first sequence where he's like trying to nurse back that
Hedgehog
hedgehog, and you're like, okay, wow, so he sucks the darkness out of the hedgehog
with a crystal.
and then the spiders that were gonna kill him left. Why?
I don't. The
Like,
whole
it's confusing.
The scene is like misplaced. Like it doesn't. It cuts off the whole Hobbit storyline,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's just like, oh, now we're taking you to Radagast in the forest with animals. It looks like you're like, wait a second, is this a Disney film?
Yeah.
And
So, like, all Gandalf really needed was just some bird flying into his ear and tweeting, and he's like, oh, there's a problem
he's
somewhere.
like, I've got to go, because that's what he does in the books. He's just
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna take off, guys. Catch up with you later. Cool. And then this one they kind of try to over-explain with Radagast, and I just don't think it's necessary. We kind of touched on this earlier, but music, I'm gonna go ahead and say 9. There was the one redeeming song, but
Yeah.
overall it's a 9.
That one redeeming song is damn good, though. I had that memorized for
Yeah.
a good few years.
If honestly, it's not long enough. It's only about like 45 seconds
Yeah.
long, and the one before that, That's What Bilbo Baggins Hates, seemed to last for like 5 minutes. So I think they bet on the wrong horse there. Moving on to CGI, another thing that I've just kicked to the horse until
Yeah.
it's dead.
Okay.
9.
No.
I'm not gonna talk about that anymore.
No.
I would probably have a stroke of anger. Another topic that you came up with was fan service, and prequels, they're gonna have fan service.
Yes.
It's kind of like whether or not you do it right. And The Hobbit.
So we're, of course, referring to older Bilbo and Frodo on the day of Bilbo's 111th birthday.
I'm gonna say 9,
interactions.
but it's got an asterisk next to it because
Yeah.
I think I'm okay with the Frodo and old Bilbo being there to tie it to Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
I'm not okay with the time that it spends doing it.
Yes.
It's a solid 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes where where Frodo and Bilbo are just like bickering. It's like, okay, guys, can we get into the movie?
It's funny. I'm with an asterisk, and that it's a little too much. I appreciated it, and I remember being really happy when I first saw Frodo, but it's too long.
JT is occasionally a glass half full kind of guy. Finally, most films are shot in 24 frames per second. This film was shot along with the other two Hobbit movies in 48 frames per second. It produces a more quote unquote realistic, less cinematic looking style. It's supposed to be sharper. There's supposed to be less blur. I've got to say, I didn't like it. It threw me off when I first watched it. I didn't know what it was until I looked it up.
Yeah.
But I knew that something was off, and I think they should have just done 24.
Yep. Do the standard, make it look good, doing the ways that you know how to make it look good. Like, it's been done.
Yeah.
You know how to do it. There's no need to pioneer something in a huge IP that we all love.
Yeah, don't reinvent the wheel, man.
It works.
Yeah, it's just another factor that leads me to believe that this movie was just overproduced. I think that The Lord of the Rings was technically brilliant, but it also had heart. It had everybody behind it genuinely had a blast making it. You hear all the old actors talk about it, and they've got like tattoos because they were like a brotherhood, and it was just that you could tell they had a blast. They absolutely loved making The Lord of the Rings. And The Hobbit, it was just you kind of get this sense of like cold, lonely, like just like stressed out atmosphere, and it's just this is the creation that came from that. I don't think there was any love or passion behind this movie, and it's sad.
Yeah. Like, you wonder if the extra pressure of competing with his old movies made it worse.
That's true.
But
That's true.
I don't think there's... Visually, it doesn't do justice to what could have been done.
It's it broke my heart, man. I mean, it's It's I'd say it's in the tier of The Last Jedi level, like,
Yes.
not quite to The Last Jedi, but it's definitely in the ballpark.
Fun fact, we extremely dislike The Last Jedi.
We're gonna get there at some point. But that's all we've got to say for J.R.R. 9. Largely negative this week.
Yes.
I know last week we didn't give a 9 out. We gave a good amount out today. So we will see you on the other side for the grade. Stick with us, folks. God dang it.
What has it come to? It's nasty little pockets. Stole it. He stole it. He stole it.
All right, JT, we're back. Let's wrap this thing up. I almost said your last name there. So, what are you going to give this movie on a scale from 1 to 10?
Oh my god. Okay, so this is difficult. I thought initially that because it's an IP that I love The Lord of the Rings, it would get like a +2 immediately. I think it gets like a -1 because it does not do a good job.
Yeah.
And it hurts to watch. I give it a 4 out of 10. I genuinely don't want to watch the movie again.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I came into this film before we watched it tonight, and I was thinking of. I thought that I liked it the best out of all the Hobbit movies. What scares me is that I might. And I thought that I'm like, okay, I'm gonna give this a 6 out of 10. Not great, but I'll watch it.
Yeah.
After watching it, I concur. I was like 4. I mean, look at what we just filmed. We crapped all over this movie for the last 24, 25 minutes. And there's a reason for that, and it's because it's a 4 out of 10 movie. It's disappointing. It's disjointed. The structure's not great. The CGI is too much. There's just too many factors that lead me to believe this movie's bad.
Even the excuse of like, oh, it's setting up storylines for the next movies, it does not function that way.
No,
it does not work.
Even if it did, the whole point of a story is to stand on its own. If it sets up something else along the way, that's fine and dandy, but you need to stand on your own as a story. And I know, let's just go into this. The Hobbit book is not very long.
True.
And they took this one slim book and split it into 3 movies, and it just doesn't work.
It's already 3 hours, basically.
Yeah.
It's 169 minutes in movie 1.
It's probably what equates to like maybe 60, 70 pages of a book. That's really stretching it, and it shows. And so that's why we're both giving it a 4 out of 10.
Yeah.
It's
like, honestly, the movie sets up 3 different plot lines, and then they get away from the war guy in the end.
Yeah.
They're like, oh wow, the war guy's still alive. Nothing really momentous happens except for Bilbo finding the ring.
And again, just disappointing. I kind of want to redo. We're never gonna get a redo though, because the Tolkien family hated this movie with good reason. So I'm sorry, Peter Jackson. Looking forward to his World War I documentary that's coming out.
Ooh.
So yeah, that's all we've got for The Hobbit.
We have hope for the future, at least.
And in the future, next week, it's going to be a spooky themed Halloween episode. What are we watching next week, JT?
So we are watching It.
And not the original one.
Yes, we are watching the new one.
2017.
2017, baby.
I will see you next week. I'm
will as
excited
well.
to review this movie. I enjoyed the movie when I first watched it. I'm interested to see if my opinions changed.
Don't enjoy scary movies, so I'm a little apprehensive to watch it
Yeah,
again.
this was our compromise. I told him we have to watch something scary, and he's like, no. I was like, what about It? He's like,
I've seen it already. Okay.
So we hope you will join us next week when we talk about It. If you liked the video, leave a comment. Let us know how we're doing. Suggest a film for us to talk about.
Please.
And leave a like. Subscribe. I don't care.
Yeah. I
not-
won't sell it that way.
Yeah, we're never going to do that. So I hope you guys have a good rest of your night or day or whenever you're watching this. And we will see you on the flippity flop.
Bye.
Don't dab. Don't dab. Don't dab. He's not doing it. All right. Peace.